What is up, Force Fam? Star Wars Dad back for another video. Before we get into today's video, please make sure to check out my Patreon. Please make sure to like and smash that like button and comment for me. It really does help the algorithm to help the channel to grow. And make sure to sign up for the 5,500 subscriber giveaway, where I will be giving away 3 carbonite packs. And then I also will be giving away a Prestige Fets Fire Spray foil to someone in the comments on this video. So just comment which one of these decks that you think will get to the top for this video. So to get into today's video, what I want to talk about is kind of what decks I think are going to be the best decks early on, and then some decks that I think are on the rise with some new additions, and then some of the new leaders that have a potential to get into the top. Maybe with a little bit of time, or maybe with more finesse with deck building, or as things evolve. So first, I wanted to kind of see what everybody thinks. So I posted a question that was basically just asking what you think are going to be some of the top decks in the Legends of the Force meta. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what some people said. My votes are Obi-Wan and Han, 2 of my favorite characters. Yeah, I mean, I think the new Obi-Wan is good. I think the Han 2 Worth the Risk is going to be absolutely one of the best decks. Definitely green and blue. And here's somebody else saying Han 2 blue. Or Darth Gibius. Qi'ra ECL, absolutely. Talzin seems solid. But I think previous leaders remain on top. Yeah, I mean, I am very much in agreement with Swag Dean here. I think Talzin is one that can compete. And I think it has the best chance of getting up there with some of the best decks in the game, but I do think a lot of the best decks just get better, and you see, and I'll talk about it more in this video, but you're just going to see like these decks getting really fine-tuned after 5 sets. Anything with Mother Talzin, Snoke all the way. Snoke is definitely an interesting one. I think it has potential for sure. Han 2 blue, obviously, yeah. I mean, Han 2 blue gets so much better. Qi'ra, another Qi'ra. Han 2 Force, Qi'ra, Cad, Quinlan. Nothing new, I'm afraid. Yeah, I mean, I think Talzin is one of the biggest ones that has a chance. Han 2 green. Han 2 is going to be one to deal with. A lot of people saying Han 2, which I am in agreement with. Obi-Wan, Talzin, Qi'ra, Han 2, Cad Bane. Double red SOR Vader is, yeah, it is definitely an outlier pick for sure. Be interested to hear more about that idea. Qi'ra Datavault, Anakin Red. It's a little different. Talzin Red, Qi'ra ECL, Obi-Wan blue. Yep. Han 2 blue. A lot of people just in agreement. Some aggro lists are more balanced, but they'll prey on the early. Yeah, I agree with that. Vader Yellow. Yeah, it's definitely going to be strong. Han green. Kaz blue. Kaz blue is one I think that needs to be talked about more. Qi'ra, Talzin, Kit Fisto. Everybody was surprised. Yeah, I'd be surprised if Kit Fisto green did really well. Paul Ottaway says, I think Mother Talzin Red has the best chance to see meta play, but personally looking forward to playing the new Kylo. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do think the new Kylo is a ton of fun. And it's one of those decks I think it's going to take a little bit of time. Quinlan Tarkintown, for sure. Matt Wick said new Maul is underrated. I absolutely agree. I think it's being brushed off as just a leader that comes on 6 and doesn't have the most HP, but I mean its ability is really strong. And you know there's ways to keep it alive with like Maul's lightsaber. I think new Maul is one of those ones who need to pay a little more attention to, and I do talk about that deck in the video today. Vader Datavault. Yeah, I mean I think one of these Avar decks is going to be good. I'm just not sure which one. I've struggled immensely with it getting run over by aggro. See Cad Bane Tarkintown. Kanan blue, Talzin, Obi-Wan is fast, yeah. Han 2 blue is going to be gas. Gar Saxon for sure, I think it's a little better. Rey and Yoda, yeah, I think Yoda Jedi Temple is going to be good. Qi'ra deck with the Force, potentially, yeah. Let's see. I'm hyping for the new Anakin leader. Gotta keep the villainy. Let's see. Barris Blue, yeah. Barris Blue is one of those ones that has potential too. We just kind of got to figure it out. It's going to take a little time to get that deck more fine-tuned. But I do like Barris the leader. It's one of those ones to pay attention to in future sets as well. If we get more crazy events. Yeah, Obi-Wan or Mother Talzin. Absolutely, those. I think those are the best two. And then we have Qi'ra Hantu Vader 4. Somebody here, Dev Lober says of our Red. I'm really liking Maul Vigilance at the moment. The double ping sets up nicely for the kill. You don't need to worry about your opponent having 2 units out, as you can put some great units in your own deck. Yeah, I mean, that's another cool thing you can do with Maul as well. Bear Sanctuary, they're excited to play. Garsax and Sabine are going to be top contenders. Yeah, Garsaxon does get better for sure. Hantu Blue gets a ton of new cards. Absolutely. Gets like 8 to 10 cards. Same with Anakin Blue. Want to build Kanan Blue. Snoke Aggression. Qi'ra will still be on top. Chancellor Palp Blue. Kazuda Blue. Yeah, Kaz Blue is one I need to revisit. I don't talk about that one in the video, but it is one that I need to revisit. But yeah, I mean, you can see the consensus is that Han 2 is going to be better, Qi'ra is going to be better, Cad and Quinlan get better, Sabine's going to be good. And then it's, definitely the consensus is Obi-Wan and Talzin. I hope Obi shines. I think the new Anakin leader will be very flexible. Yeah, I mean, I think the new Anakin leader is another one of those ones that needs to be fine-tuned a little bit. But once it gets fine-tuned, it has a lot of potential. I do talk about that deck in here in this video today as well. Twilight Anakin got some major love, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. There's so many leaders to try with Arrow Eng. Garsaxon, Hantu, Talzin, Thrawn, JT. Yeah, Thrawn's another one that gets better for sure. I mean, Thrawn's already been doing pretty well with the Datavault. I could see Obi-Wan, Talzin, Snoke, and Avar. Panic says. Han 2 is going to be super spicy and a constant. Yeah. Both green and blue. Obi-Wan. Virgin's Temple. Yep. Obi-2 is looking pretty scary, so is Talzin. Raven Blue. I have not messed around with Raven myself at all. But be nice to see somebody come up with something that works. But yeah, that was kind of the consensus from the community, and I agree with just about everything there. Definitely interested to see some of these outliers that people were talking about. So number one for me has to be Qi'ra ECL. I think it could be. I think we may see variations of villainy blue leaders with ECL because of Vader that are going to be good. But I think Qi'ra is just. It's going to be the one that you see the most of. It's one of the best leaders in the game, and it's just Vader takes it to another level. I like to have Anakin in here as well, as just another good ECL target that can double kill, and Anakin itself is a good unit either way. But I've seen other builds that don't include Anakin. I think Qi'ra ECL is definitely going to be one of the best decks. I mean, the Vader ECL play is one of the strongest plays in the game at this point. The Anakin ECL play is actually even stronger. Not necessarily in this build, but it is in other decks where you can get like ambush in and do -6/6 and potentially kill up to 3 units or take out big threats. It's just both of those cards are just insane. But Qi'ra is able to play both of them, and Qi'ra was already one of the best decks in the game. So I just think that we're going to see this deck really just come back in full force. I do think that there's other villainy leaders. I think Garsaxon, I think Thrawn, that we may see more of. There's probably 1 or 2 I'm missing that have potential to be more relevant. Krennic has potential to be more relevant, I'm sure. So I think just a combination of these, even Talzin ECL potentially is another strong one. But I think Qi'ra is just the leader that it is fine-tuned at this point, and Vader, all you're doing with Vader is just adding in an additional card an additional win con, essentially, like after that Qi'ra barrage turn, and then, like I said, I play Anakin too, so that's just another way to shift the board state into my favor to set up the late game and take over the game. So I just think Qi'ra is a well-rounded deck. It has good matchups across the board. It's more about you as a player, and then getting the overpowered combination of Vader ECL added in just is going to make this deck even better. And I think it has the best chance to be, one of the early favorites. I think Qi'ra Datavault is still going to be strong. I figured I'd just mention this alongside ECL. I think both of these decks are going to be good. I think a lot of that comes down to player preference and like what suits you as a player. So far, I've definitely preferred the ECL version just because that ECL turn is so strong. And with Datavault, you have to do that a turn later. With the Timeline, you have to have the Timeline in your hand. So it's definitely a little different. Um, still going to be a very strong deck, I think. But I think that ECL with Vader is just nuts. So, but I think this is another one you're going to see a lot of it. I mean, still getting Vader and Anakin added into this version makes it stronger. It's just again, I think it's more about you as a player and which base suits your playstyle better. But both of these are going to be very relevant. Uh, Next, I think Quinlan gets even better. The new Quinlan unit is insane. Like just being able to swing in for 8 or 9 damage with Hotshot Blaster or Surprise Strike is really strong to close the game now. Constructed Lightsaber gives the deck a nice piece of restore that fits in nicely to one of its weaknesses in the deck, where you could get run over by Sabine. So I think that this deck just gets a little better. Adigalia is a really strong addition as well. So I think a lot of what you're seeing from this set early on is just going to be, you know, leaders that have already had a lot of success getting even better. Because that's just like, that's the natural way things progress, right? Like you're making decks that are already good even better because it's an easy thing to do. You're just taking out a few cards and putting in a few cards and making the deck even better. And, we're getting 5 sets in now. Like you're seeing how strong these decks are going to be. So these leaders are already extremely strong. They're going to be even stronger. So I do think that will make it a little harder for some of those, off meta decks to push in and to be as relevant just because these decks are just getting fine tuned at this point and they're becoming extremely strong. Like Quinlan feels very strong. I could absolutely see Quinlan just doing its thing and being an early favorite. But that Quinlan unit is just, it gives the deck a much needed closer just to like push through and close out the game quickly. And especially because it's only 4 resources to be able to swing in for that much damage with a Hotshot Blaster or Surprise Strike is very strong. And then you're still adding in like your Plo Koons and your Poe Damerons and Hans, as well as pushing damage in other ways. So that plus Hand Disruption. I think Hand Disruption is going to be very strong this set. Quinlan was already doing that, but it had it's always been a well-rounded deck, but it had its weaknesses of aggro. So I think that weakness gets a little bit stronger here. But that's another one I think we're going to see a lot of early on. Cad Bane gets even stronger as well. I think this is going to be played a lot too. Aura Sing is awesome as a turn 1 play. The Marauder is great for turn 2. Those are the biggest changes in my particular list. I do like Tip to Scale on the sideboard. I think it helps the control matchup, which was a little dicey, like against Qi'ra. So maybe that'll help the matchup with Qi'ra a little bit more. But I do think that this deck gets even better. Yeah, those are the biggest 2 changes for me. Haven't played a lot of CAD lately, but I do think CAD is going to be another one that we see more of. Aura Sing and Marauder are just very strong units. Next, of course, is Sabine. I think Sabine is going to feast early on because a lot of these Force leaders, trying to get the Force set up and do their thing. I think Sabine just comes in there and runs them over. A lot of these decks, like the Avar Chris is a good example. Like I cannot beat Sabine consistently with that deck at all. And I think there's other decks like that Sabine is just going to do its thing. It's a fine-tuned deck. It's been played for a year and over a year now, and it's 5 sets in, and it's extremely fine-tuned. You added in Adigalia. I didn't change too much because it's been working for me just the way it is. But that's another one I think we're just going to see just kind of everywhere early on until some of these other decks start to get a little more fine-tuned and people start to figure things out. I think that this deck just gets even better. So, I mean, so far you're looking at decks that you're already aware of. But, I mean, I think that's just how the set is going to be. A lot of the new leaders they're cool, and they do some really cool things. But as far as, like, winning games quickly and winning games consistently, I think that's a little hard to say at this point in time. But these decks are all going to be better. This is one of the first ones that I think we're going to see a lot of. I think both Han Green and Han Blue with this particular Han are going to be two of the top decks in the format. When you play testing these decks, it feels just like so much power uh, that this deck has access to now at a very early stage. Like turn two, you're pulling out Eth Koth or Kiadi Mundi. You get a better Sentinel with Obi-Wan, and then you still have like the things you had before with Poe and Home One and Crate Dragon, but then you're adding in Mace Windu and Kelleran and Yoda. Like it just this deck feels very strong. It's very well rounded. My particular version, I'm focusing a little more on discard too, which is kind of where you're getting into with a lot of these hero decks. It's just like the Force Throw Jedi and Hiding and Pillage combination, because that's just in some games that can literally the combination of those three cards can just win you the game, especially in a deck like this where you're cheating units out. And I think you're going to see the same kind of thing in a lot of these hero blue decks as well, where those decks all kind of get better and can really put up a fight in lots of different ways. So again, we're seeing, 5 sets deep what these leaders can look like. And these leaders already had like very strong abilities, and you're just getting a lot better units at this point to play with these leaders with. So but in this particular deck, you're using like General's Blade to cheat things out alongside Han. You could even put the 2-drop in here as well, which I don't think is a bad idea. That cheats things out instead of Grogu. I think I'm okay with that because it's a common card and it just gives you another way to cheat things out. But being able to play like a Kelleran consistently on your 5-resource turn is pretty insane. So deck's gonna be good. It's felt great in testing. Just too much, just too overwhelming for your opponent. Like too many good cards coming down way too fast. And then here's the Han Blue. Yeah, I mean, this deck has been very strong in testing. A lot of the same things you're seeing from the last deck. So the difference is a lot more early restore effects. Then I'm using Ogdu Bogdu with Phantom as turn 1 plays as well, just to be able to get in for 5 power. So this deck can play aggressively. It can also play pretty solid defense with Concord and Chirrut, and then you're benefiting from the constructed lightsaber as an additional way to add in sentinels with like Ogdu Bogdu, make Chirrut stronger, Anakin a sentinel, even like Bendu and Crate Dragon become sentinels, which is just I think you're just going to win the game at that point either way. But of course, then you have like your unit removal with Anakin and Luke that you're cheating out earlier, and Mace Windu. So a combination of those 3 cards is very strong. The Warrior does a great job of helping you to get your life total in check. Yaddle does some subtle life gain, and then you just have strong removal with Fell the Dragon and Shatterpoint, and then your big closers with Bendu and Crate Dragon, and then you also have your hand disruption with Force Throw, Pillage, and Jedi in Hiding. So this is one of those decks that's definitely on the rise, and I absolutely could see this deck being an early favorite because it's very well balanced. It has all the things, right? It has a good curve, it has hand disruption, it has restore effects, it has great pieces of removal and unit removal, and it has very good closers with Bendu and Crate Dragon. Just big power. And then the fact that it's able to do all this while cheating things out early is insane. So between this and green, I think you're going to see a lot of this deck being played, and I think they very well could end up taking over the format just because leaders that have the ability to cheat things out early are always going to be strong. And then now that we're 5 sets deep and they have all these cards that just make them very good, and they have the force mechanic in addition added in, which just feels like it doesn't feel like the main focus of the deck, but it feels like a strong addition to an already good archetype. So this is probably one of the decks that I would play just because I like Hero Blue a lot. It's between this and Anakin from Shadows of the Galaxy. As far as like which Hero Blue deck I would play, I think both of those get very strong. But this one, of course, just cheating things out, it's gonna be strong. Um, yeah, I could absolutely see this deck taking over. And here's Anakin Blue. I kind of paired all these Hero Blue decks together because they all they all feel very, very similar. A lot of the same cards. And I talked about this in another video, but these decks got like 8 to 10 good cards like added into them, like with Adigalia, Secretive Sage, Yaddle, Jedi in Hiding, Constructed Lightsaber, Chirrut, the Warrior, Ki-Adi-Mundi is insane, Anakin, Mace Windu. There's so many cards, Shatterpoint, that got added into these decks, and these archetypes are already like very strong and on the fringe of being very close to being at the top. And I think getting this many cards just throws them into the top. Like at the very least the top 10, but I think both these decks, because they're so well rounded, because they have a little bit of everything, and it's more about you as a player being good with the archetype, and but it has answers to everything just about, right? Like what deck are you gonna see here that you're like, oh, I didn't want to see that matchup. Like I don't think you're gonna be worried about too many matchups with Han 2 Blue and Anakin Blue. I think both of them they're just well-rounded decks that have good matchups across the board. This is another one that I think is just going to be great. The Constructed Lightsaber is a little bit better in here too because it fits so well on Anakin. Of course, it doesn't go on to Han, but in Han, it's more of like Sentinel and Restore effects. In here, it's a way to just close the game out with Anakin as well as those other things that it was doing in Han. They're playing a lot of the same removal, all the hand disruption again. And you can tell the decks are extremely similar, so going to be a good one. Next is Rey Datavault. I didn't adjust this list with any new cards yet, but I do think that this is Sarah's list, but I do think that this deck's still going to be around. I do think it gets better, some better additions, and it may not be Datavault anymore. It may be Jedi Temple. I don't know. It's not a deck I've played a lot, so I didn't want to like try to sit here and build one real quickly just for the video. But I do think that this deck will still be relevant. It's kind of been everywhere recently, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think what's more on the rise is going to be Rey Red for me, and again with these same additions, the same kind of build, a little bit different because of Rey, the Black One and the Witch of the Mist, being able to pump those up right away. A lot of the other similarities, though, I'm trying to think there's much difference. Just a lower curve, but I think this is of the 3 hero red decks. I think this is I still like it, but I think it's not as powerful as Anakin and Han Blue. Just because the leader itself can be removed fairly easily, and it comes out the same turn as Anakin, but that 6 HP can be removed pretty easily. I think that's the biggest reason, but I still think it's going to be a strong contender. It felt great in testing. And I'll kind of talk about not to take it for what it is, but I'm going to talk about the statistics of some of these decks online so far, just to kind of give you an idea of how they've been performing, and take it for what it is. But it's still a sample size. Next up is Vader Yellow. I think it's just been a very strong aggro deck as it's gotten more honed in. It gets a couple more tools from this new set. I think it just continues to be a deck that can just run over decks that aren't ready for it, or don't have a strong space presence. The ability to kind of just go wide and then just hit you with big bombs in space is still just been really strong. Playing a bunch of one resource units. Gets the new patroller at 2 cost, which is another just good turn 1 play, as well as a decent target for Vader on its flip turn. So I think this deck is going to continue to be heavily played, and I think these more fine-tuned decks early on, or especially like with the championships coming up, I don't think too many people are going to be going hard on the new decks. I think there's a couple that you might see a good amount of play with, but I think it's mostly going to be these honed in decks that have been played and have had a lot of success. Here's one that I think is kind of on the rise. I do think it has potential because of Anakin and Vader just being such strong cards in here. I mean, Anakin in particular can very easily activate both of its win plate abilities. Vader continues to be very strong. Anakin's probably more of the MVP in this particular build, though, just because it's such a good piece of removal. A lot of times just on curve because of the nature of this deck. But Shan Flurry is disgusting in here with Anakin and Vader, and then even Luke, it's very strong with. Just be able to restore 3 on attack while removing another unit. So essentially doing the double kill thing as well, plus gaining 3 life. So just this is one of those decks I think it takes a lot of finesse and a lot of playtesting to get the hang of it and get a feel for it of like when to do things, when to flip, when to pass, how to kind of when to stay on the hero side, when to go on the villainy side, all that kind of stuff takes a lot of practice to get a feel for this deck. I think a little more testing than most decks, but I do think that this is a deck that you might see some sneaky wins with because it can when it gets flowing with the card advantage, the restore, the solid pieces of removal, and then those strong units that I just mentioned to overtake the game. Like it can really just feel like you're obliterating an opponent once you get going. And then you get the early Sentinels. The addition of Wolf is good. Just a good deck. So now getting into the new leaders, I think Talzin Red is definitely one we're going to see a lot of play. And actually, I mean, again, for what it's worth, but like in over 1,000 game sample size online, I think its win percentage is like 65%, which is definitely on the higher side of win percentages for even some of a lot of the decks that I just mentioned. I do think that I mean, it's a sample size and it's online, and online people are testing things and they're not necessarily used to playing against Talzin and all that. But I do think Talzin is definitely one of the better leaders from the new set, if not the best. And then I think in red in particular, it fits so well with what Talzin does with the -1/-1 and being able to remove things and set up knockouts. And I think Talzin ECL is another potential version of this deck, but this one in particular, where it's just more force centric, has felt really good in testing. I I always feel like I have a chance. Again, we're getting into like it's a well balanced build. It has a lot of good removal. Like Force Lightning becomes like your rival's fall. You're getting able to play Force Choke at 1 cost with all your forced units. You have Hand Disruption with the Force Throw Jedi and hiding. You pillage in the sideboard. You have a lot of good unit removal. I think it's close to like 35 to 40 cards in here are pieces of removal essentially, and a lot of them are unit based. So it's able to do a good job of controlling the board. The Talzin ECL version, which I'll show a picture here in a second, like that version is not as force centric, obviously, and then it's a little more focused on using cards like Gideon and Craving Power to boost up Talzin to make it more of an effective unit on curve. And of course, you're using Barrage and your other big units, so it has potential, and I think it's one of the ones that we might see a good amount of play alongside Qi'ra with that archetype, just because Vader is so strong. But Talzin gives it like a different dynamic. So as that deck gets a little more honed in, I think we could see those two versions in particular with Talzin. This one has been very good testing. Like I said, 65% win rate with over 1,000 games online is pretty strong, and it's just a lot of fun to play this deck. So I think this is one that we could see absolutely even being played in the Galactic Championships, and even just kind of sneak into that top 5, top 10 decks potentially as it continues to get more honed in on the build that works. Obi-Wan's another one. I think it's just blue. I've played against Obi-Wan Yellow and Red, and I always beaten them online. I think the blue one is the one where things get a little more competitive for sure, because you're getting the restore, you're getting a lot of good unit removal, you're getting good strong pieces of removal. Churd is a very strong sentinel. Just a lot of ways to get out your big stuff really early in here with the Jedi Chancellor and the General's Blade, and then good early sentinels. Being able to consistently play like Kelleran and Luke on 5 resources and Home One on 6 resources is that's a very strong archetype in general. Being able to play those cards consistently that cheap. So that's why I'm playing so many turn 1 plays on the ground to be able to get General's Blade as often as possible to be able to play that. Because if I'm able to and I'm not playing against Power of the Dark Side, like that's a very hard thing for my opponent to overcome, because I'm just going to get so much advantage with my ability to cheat things out. I mean, even cheating out a 2-drop after playing the General's Blade and attacking in is really strong, so that my board can go wide. I can put a Consular out there, for example, alongside the unit with General's Blade, and then I'm just like home free to start cheating out Kelleran and Luke, and just to get huge advantage with my units. Obi-Wan's ability is cool too, like it, boosting up these units that don't have an experience token. Just making Qi'ra to 4/6 is strong. I mean, Qi'ra with the General's Blade is insane. It's like a 7/9 Sentinel that gets -2/0 when you attack into it if you have the Force. There's just some really cool things in here. Solid removal. The sideboard I think is still a work in progress, but you just want to have good removal for big threats, I think. Forces with Me is nice as a piece of removal / a way to close the game out. You could also play Maz Kanata in here, but I really like Forces with Me because of the shield aspect as a way to, remove a unit on the ground that's a threat, or most of the time on the ground, and then not take any damage, I think is big. And then the 2 experience tokens are really nice too to hold on to. So, but I think Maz Kanata is worthy of being included here as well. I do think that Obi-Wan Blue is a deck that you're probably going to see played, and I think it's another one of those ones that has the potential to kind of rise up, kind of like Rey Datavault, but just flip-flopped with a lot of the same concepts, but just a bigger curve with the ability to cheat things out, which is always a good thing. So that's one I could see sneaking into the best decks. This is one that I really enjoy. It's probably one of the ones that's the most fun to play for me, but absolutely, it's still a work in progress. When there's some games where you can just do the thing, have the right upgrades in your hand, and just kind of run over your opponent on curve. There's other games where things are kind of awkward and you don't find what you're looking for. I have gotten it to a place where I have Top Target in here as an additional card to draw, as well as an additional cheap way to gain life when needed. I still have Vigilance in here because that's definitely the weakness of this deck, is because it's not an aggro deck necessarily. You could play more units to be a little more aggro, but then you're losing out on upgrade consistency, and the card cycling. So it's definitely a work in progress, but I can imagine that someone that focuses their time on this particular leader and gets it to a really good spot, you could see this leader really sneaking in. Again, it's that villainy ECL build. Kylo's ability is very, very cool, and the flip turn, especially in here with the Craving Power, Legal Authority, even Craving Power plus Electro Staff is really strong to make Kylo a 9/9 that attacking into it take 1 less. Craving Power, Legal Authority in particular is very strong, and then barraging with these big drops at the bottom of the screen, and Kylo can really just shut your opponent out of the game. But I do think you need, from my experience in playtesting, you need forms of life gain with Top Target, Vigilance, and Heirloom to stay in the game, especially in the games where things don't go as well. You could play the Reinforcement Walker as well, which I did in my original list. But I like the Vigilance as a form of removal, because sometimes that makes more sense than flipping Kylo around the 6/7 resources. But Reinforcement Walker might be a card to put back in at the top end. But this is my build. There's a lot of different ways to play this, but this is the build that's felt the most consistent and good to me. I think it's like at 14 upgrades, I want to say. 14's felt pretty good around that number, so that I can draw consistently when I need to. I mean, against decks that are more mid-range, like this deck can eat them alive with finding Anakins and Vaders, because Anakins and Vaders are so strong in here. Anakin with the potential for triple kills is just nuts when you get Heirloom in there. You could play Rey. I did play Rey in here for a while, but against aggro, it just felt like I needed more life gain, and it wasn't doing a lot for me. I think it's really good in certain matchups to have the Rey in here as another hero to discard, as well as a way to put shields on your Sentinels, but I, in my playstyle, have just felt that I need more life gain. But this is another one that I think is just a lot of fun, and I could see someone really honing in on this deck and really perfecting it and getting it to a place where some of the awkward clunkiness of it gets better, and they get to a place where it can be competitive with some of these decks at the top. I mean, again, any ECL villainy deck where you're playing Vader alone automatically just gives it such strength, and then you're just figuring out how to make it work with that particular leader to make it consistently well-rounded against the decks that are in the field. So this is one that I just really enjoy, though. I've seen a lot of people say that they love this deck and they just really want it to work. So that alone, I think, is a reason why it could potentially have more success too, is because people really enjoy the leader, and they're gonna, and it definitely has potential. So if people don't give up on it, they keep pushing and trying to find a way. I definitely could see this deck finding a way into some of the into those top tiers and being competitive. A lot of times I think when decks don't succeed, it's because maybe they didn't have any success and they're not seeing results, and then people just kind of give up on them a lot of times because it's consensus is it's not good, and I think that's where sometimes you can find diamonds in the rough. And I don't think Kylo's necessarily a diamond in the rough, but I do think that it because people enjoy it so much that it has a higher chance of being successful than some of these other leaders that are on the fringe of being ultra competitive. So but this is one of my favorites. I've been loving playing this deck. It's so much fun to play. I'm probably going to do another video on it again just because I've been enjoying playing it so much. Maul is another one of those. This is kind of exactly what I was just talking about. This is one of those leaders that people are just kind of writing it off as Talzin's better. And I don't know. I think the action ability is really strong. And if this deck gets more honed in and somebody who really enjoys this leader starts to figure it out, you can start seeing this leader have more success. It plays very similar to Talzin. The knock on Maul versus Talzin, of course, is that it flips on 6 and it's a 5/6, so its HP is not the greatest. But I mean, using Darth Maul's lightsaber, it becomes a 9/8, which is pretty strong. And I think that might be the card that needs to be in here, and maybe that even needs to be a 3 of. But otherwise, it plays very similar to Talzin and a lot of the things that it does. The difference is that you're able to ping 2 things per turn. You can even play grit units in here, which is another thing I could see people doing to benefit from that. Like Scimitar, for example, in space is a good one. Just like to damage it and immediately make it a 6/5 or 6 powered unit. I think there's some potential here. So it's not one I'm willing to write off. And in testing, it's been great. So now its stats aren't as good as Talzin's, his online stats. But I think part of that too is that it hasn't been played as much. So this is one that I would say with more time and more focus on the deck building aspect of this and getting it the optimal list, I could see this one starting to sneak into smaller tournaments maybe at first. But I think there's potential here. Again, it's well rounded. It has a lot of the same things as the Talzin Red I just showed. Just a lot of strong removal. So, and then hand disruption. And then Maul's attack ability is very good as the leader too. If you can keep it alive, especially with the Maul's lightsaber, you're swinging in with a 9 powered unit that does damage to 2 different things. It sets up knockouts for your pieces of removal. So could be good. We'll see though, right? Anakin's another one. It's kind of like the results online even aren't that good. I think it's like a less than 50% win rate, which is definitely not good. My experience was different. I won probably 75% of my games. I mean, I didn't play a ton of games, but I did well. You could argue that some of it's a new deck and people aren't prepared. But I think, the way I've looked at Anakin since building this is that it's a hero blue deck that occasionally I'm going to use a villainy card as a strong piece of removal. So you're not like always using the force ability in this deck. Like occasionally with Turret and Warrior, you're going to do that a decent amount. Occasionally with the pieces of removal when it makes sense, right? And then you still have cards like Takedown and Forces with Me, Anakin and Luke as pieces of removal that work well without having to use the force. And then Constructed Lightsaber is very strong in here, especially on Anakin. You could even argue that it needs to be 3 of. So I think this is one of those decks that it's going to take a little time to get this list right. But I mean, being able to play again, you're playing those hero blue colors with the restore and the removal that are strong, and then you could also put Shatterpoint in here. I think I had one on the side. Maybe Shatterpoint instead of No Glory, so that you have consistent non-leader removal unit without having to switch over because you still have Barrage, Power, and Force Lightning. Maybe that needs to be just Shatterpoint. I mean, it's going to be little things like that need to be tweaked over time. But I do think that writing it off just because you can play villainy, I think the argument for me is that you're getting access to really strong restore effects when you're playing the hero blue side of things, and that can make a difference. And that's definitely one of villaini's weaknesses at times, right? Is that you don't have access to a bunch of restore effects on units, and it's more like restore removal with vigilance or top target has to be played. And in here, like, I don't need to focus on that as much because I have such good restore units with like Warrior and Yoda and Yaddle and Luke, so, and even Kanan. So obviously, like, Warrior, Kanan, and Anakin are all very strong barrage targets to hit for 6 damage. So I mean, there's that. You got to play a lot of early Force units to get the Force online. So we'll see. But this is one of those ones I could see it getting better over time as people start to hone in with lists and start to see it have a little more success. I'm not sure how much we'll see of it at like the championships. I could see it not being played because of the worries that it will be inconsistent and not being a deck that's been played a lot. But it's definitely one I could see sneaking in and getting better over time. So it's not one I'm not willing to write this one off just because it's a little awkward. I think it has some good strong pieces to it. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with things. I think a lot of what we're gonna see early on is just the leaders that have had success get even better with these 5 sets deep. I think there's Han 2 is absolutely going to be one of the best decks going forward. I think it's going to be Qi'ra Han 2. I think you're going to see a lot of Sabine. I think you're going to see a lot of Quinlan, and then probably some Cad too. I think all those decks are going to be really strong early on. You might see, something that does well against those decks. Maybe like you might see a little bit of hard control potentially early on to deal with some of those. But I think all the hand disruption is probably going to keep hard control in check, I think, because it's just naturally included in a lot of those hero blue decks. I think Anakin blue gets a lot better. Uh, I'm excited to see what ends up doing well at these tournaments, especially the championships. I'm excited to see if some of these new leaders can really get a hold and get a spot in the meta, like Talzin, for example. I think Talzin definitely has the best chance, but I think, there's some other leaders that could sneak in there too. I think Anakin's one. I think Maul has potential. Uh, and Kylo definitely has potential. So we'll see, you know. But hope you guys enjoy the video. As always, y'all have a good one and peace out.